Hi, here we are with Les Lutz. He's the horticulture director of the Heritage Museum and Gardens, and we're here to talk about the new changes that's going to happen at the garden and how he has adjusted to this wonderful new job. We're in the herb garden here of the Heritage Museum. So this is Les. Welcome to Sandwich. Welcome to the Heritage Museum. We're really glad to have you in town. I understand that your background is very varied. Could you give us a little bit of an update as to where you've been before you came to Heritage?
Sure. Well, I started off at a place called Longwood Gardens.
In Pennsylvania.
Outside of Philadelphia, Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. It was a former DuPont estate, and in my opinion, it is probably the best botanical garden in this country, or display garden. I was there for about 9.5 years, between going to school, and then I worked there as curator of the bonsai collection at Longwood.
Bonsai collection,
yes.
Oh,
so
how interesting.
Bonsai has been a hobby of mine pretty much all my life, ever since Longwood. I moved from Longwood to the New York Botanical Garden in New York City, and I was manager of the conservatory in New York for almost 3 years. So that was a great experience.
For those that don't know, the conservatory is the greenhouse?
Yes, the conservatory, it's a 1-acre Victorian greenhouse built in 1899.
Right.
So 113 or so years old. I left NYBG and moved to Salisbury, Maryland. I was director of horticulture, managing a 100-acre campus, one of the schools of the University System of Maryland. So a very similar size. Obviously, it didn't have the maturity of this garden, but a similar size landscape that I managed. And I did that for 17 years.
And in actuality, a very similar environment.
Yes, exactly.
Inner Maryland and Cape Cod have a very similar zone 6, 7. So you can, the plants that you could grow there or plant to grow here will work very well here too.
Yes.
So this is that was a good background for coming
I think
to
so.
Heritage.
Yeah, it's a very
very
almost the same growing zone, hardiness zone. Most of the plants here I know from Maryland, so it was kind of a homecoming coming back here.
Okay.
When I left Maryland, I moved to Nebraska.
That was different.
And that was very different. I was Chief Operations Officer for Omaha Botanical Garden in Omaha, Nebraska, and so I managed horticulture, education, maintenance, security, and I guess that was it. But for again, a 100-acre garden. I don't know why that number seems to stick.
Well, it's manageable, I think. Yeah.
And then I was kind of looking to move back to the East Coast. I saw this opportunity. It looked like a perfect fit, and I applied, and I'm here.
Well, we're really glad you are. I think that background will work wonders here.
I hope so.
Very diverse background, but almost all of it in horticulture.
Mm-hmm.
So
at Botanical Gardens.
At Botanical Gardens, which is what this is. And Botanical Garden to me means teaching.
Yes.
As opposed to a display garden. Display garden, you go and you look at the little things. So are you going to try to bring more teaching and tours and classes here? Can you tell us a little about that?
We're offering quite a bit this year. I'm doing some classes on, I couldn't tell you exactly all of them, but indigenous plants. We're doing a series on using indigenous plants in your landscape.
Native plants, good.
Native plants. During Rhododendron Festival Week, I'm doing a session on how to propagate rhododendrons so people can see that. Some talks on how to use rhododendrons in your landscape. I think those will be interesting for a lot of people. Bonsai, of course, since that's my background.
Of course, gotta have some fun.
Yep, I'm doing a lecture on bonsai, and then I'm also doing a 3-session class, and people get to develop and take home their own bonsai.
Oh, fantastic!
So that'll be something.
They have an expert right here. They can come and ask questions to, which is wonderful.
Yep.
How about as we get on in the season, will you have any classes on perennials or herb gardening or anything like
perennials that? Probably will be next year.
Okay.
You can only do so much.
Yes, you're one person.
So I'm trying to to start off and give as much as we can, but again, next year we'll branch out and do some more.
Okay.
I am doing a walk and talk. The fourth Wednesday of every month that is free to the public, and we'll meet at the visitor center, and we're going to walk through the garden and talk about different subjects. One of them will be, in fact, one tomorrow on what's in bloom. So we'll be talking about the crab apples and the pyrus and
that wonderful native dogwood that
right,
you have blooming
exactly.
over there, which is unusual.
The quince and lots of things that are coming into flower. Some
Right.
rhododendrons are starting to flower. So we'll be talking about a lot of those things.
Okay.
Then some on pests in your garden. There'll be a talk on that.
That'll be well attended.
One on vegetables. We're doing a small vegetable garden.
That's new to
Yeah.
Heritage. We've never had a vegetable garden here.
Yeah, it's
What
not
area?
very large.
What area are you planning on doing that?
It's actually right outside the cafe, and I thought it would be
wonderful.
kind of fun to have
Wonderful.
cafe and
Yes.
vegetables right next to each other.
Wouldn't that be nice?
So we call it the cafe garden.
Yes.
And we actually planted it last week, and we used two different classes of local school groups, and they came in and they helped us plant it.
Oh, fun.
So it's all planted now except for the tomatoes and peppers.
Yeah, well, you have the lettuce in, and
right.
the early broccolis and the early vegetables in,
Yep.
and then in May when it's proper time, you'll put the tomatoes and the green beans and things. And then you're going to plan on using them in the cafe at all. Some of the produce?
Probably.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I mean it's a relatively small garden. It's
Yeah.
about 35 feet by 20 feet, so
Yeah.
it's not like we're going to produce a huge amount of vegetables. But you
But
know,
a wonderful teaching garden, and
Yeah,
big
I think
enough.
so.
That's large enough for a family.
right.
A family garden. It's a beautiful size for a family garden.
Yep.
And again, a botanical garden should be teaching, and that will be a teaching tool, and it just to be able to see that vegetable garden, which
Yeah.
which is.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that'll
So you're
draw
doing
people.
more than you knew.
Yes.
More changes than you
Yeah.
even thought about,
Right.
which is wonderful. So it's there's anything else that you can think of that's coming up in the next couple weeks. I love the fact that you're doing them every month, because each week actually a place like this will change. Different things will come into bloom and go out of bloom. But if you came at least once a month, you would see a total changeover.
Oh yeah.
A complete changeover of
In
what's
a month, a lot happens.
a lot happens in a
Yeah.
month. And you could come here and walk with you
Yep.
and see different things in July. Most likely emphasis would be on the hydrangeas and the daylilies. This month it's on the flowering trees.
Right.
So as you get into different months, August you'll be into dahlias and wonderful things that bloom at
Yep,
that time.
exactly.
So
Annuals in the garden.
just to put on your calendar each one of those, you would see a different face of heritage each time.
Right.
That's a great teaching tool.
Yeah.
I think
we're
that's
doing
wonderful.
one on traveling trees.
Traveling
which is
trees.
Trees that are maybe not necessarily indigenous or native.
Okay.
So
okay.
trees that have traveled the world and ended up here.
Like the ginkgo.
Yes,
Yes.
ginkgo.
Yeah. I know.
Dawn redwood,
Yes.
Stewardias, some really kind of more unusual trees, and trees that we happen to have some of the largest specimens of that I've ever seen.
Yes, we do.
And that's saying something. I've seen some pretty incredible gardens, and we've got some incredible specimens.
Yes,
so
we have some
that's
beautiful
something
trees.
that I think
One-
people need
yeah.
to come and see.
One of my favorites is the gigantic umbrella pine.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, perfect example.
Beautiful
Yep.
umbrella pine that's over there. Just
Yeah.
a spectacular plant.
Right.
And it's so many people put them in front of their house when they're this big, and they don't realize how big they can get until they can come someplace like
45,
here.
50
And
foot
it's
tree.
50 feet tall, yeah, which is wonderful. So the resources here are limitless, and every time you can come, you could see something different. Something that stands out that before you didn't notice.
Right.
Which is phenomenal. What your immediate plans are for this year?
Okay. Well, we're working right now on trying to get things cleaned up from winter,
Okay.
get things mulched, looking good for the public. And then we're going to start mid-May or so working on the rhododendron collection.
Okay.
And that to me is one of the most important things we're going to do this
Right.
year.
Yes.
We're going to go through and catalog everything, prune everything, clean everything up, remulch, propagate all the varieties that we have, and make sure that what we have is what we say it is. So
That's important, because I know myself, a lot of times we come to here, especially in May. This year you said you expect them to really be at their peak early May, 1st to the 15th of May, and they're going to do the rhododendron days from 16th to the 19th.
19th through the
19th to
26th.
the 26th. Okay.
Right.
So anytime during the month of May, that's the time. That is when the heritage is at its best. Though it's beautiful all year, that it is open from April until November. It is well known, most known for its rhododendron
Yes,
groups.
definitely.
Mr. Dexter lived here. This was actually his house that we're filming next to here. The Dexter rhododendrons are well known in the trade, and he planted many of them all through the gardens.
Yes.
So you're going to name some of them also? Put
Well,
names
we've
next to
named
them?
a couple in the last several years, and we're going to have a contest this year to name another one.
That's wonderful what you're doing with the rhododendrons. Tell us about some of the other gardens that bloom at different times of year in Heritage.
Okay. Well, certainly in the summertime, one of our highlights is the daylily collection, and that collection will be flowering probably late June through July. We have several thousand varieties of daylilies, and I met with the head of the local daylily society this weekend, and we're actually going to start working on going through and weeding out a few of the older varieties, and updating, bringing in some new varieties that have been recently developed and hybridized, and so we're hoping to really work on updating that collection. And also making sure that it's properly labeled, which is important. Our hosta collection is one of the best in the area, and that's another collection we're going to be working on as well. That collection is really a 3-season collection. It's started already. Of course, the hostas have started growing. Foliage is why people grow hostas, and so we're going to be working with that collection, and again, getting rid of a few of the varieties that maybe are more common or that aren't that interesting, and adding a few varieties that are
Wonderful.
some newer,
Wonderful.
more interesting varieties in that area. And we're also going to be bringing in some other plants and redesigning the hosta collection so that you can see how to use hostas with other companion plants in a shade garden setting. So lots of ferns and shade
Loving plants.
I want to try some camellias that I mentioned
I
earlier.
know, I heard you, that camellias. Whoa.
So I think there are a lot of exciting things happening
exciting.
this year.
You have a hydrangea garden too, I
We do.
understand.
It's a very good collection. I met with some of the folks from the Hydrangea Society last week, and we're going to be doing some things in that area as well, trying to redesign the space and to show people more how to use hydrangeas in their garden. And since they're such a popular plant and do so well on the Cape, we figured that we should try and show people how to use them on the Cape, and not just simply lines and lines of hydrangeas, but actually how to use hydrangeas in a garden setting. And so we're going to be working on redesigning that.
I think that's wonderful. So you're really moving eventually over the years to doing more of a mixed borders and shade,
Exactly.
and mixed borders with shrubs and that type of thing, which is an enormous amount of fun.
Right.
That
I think so.
people can get a lot more ideas from it that way.
And that's the whole reason we're
Right.
here, so people can
Right.
see these plants and see how to use them in their
in their
own
garden,
setting.
in their own garden, which is wonderful. As you work your way further back into the garden, you get the hydrangeas, and you get back into the open field where people play croquet and all that type of
yes.
wonderful things. There's some great gardens back in that area too, which are very full sun. And then of course back into the art museum and that type of thing, which is really, as a horticulture person, not your forte. What I guess I wanted to talk about where it started too. Did the whole thing start around the windmill? Do you know?
Actually, I think right around the house that we're in right now, or
Okay.
next to right now, the Dexter house. And the Dexters are the family that back in the late 1920s through the 1930s bought the property and worked on the development of lots and lots of hybridizing of rhododendrons. And it's really because of Mr. Dexter that rhododendrons are where they are today in the trade. Prior to him, there really hadn't been a lot of work done on hybridizing rhododendrons.
They were more something for the woods.
Right, exactly. There
yeah.
were lots of native rhododendrons, but they were pretty, but they weren't spectacular.
Right.
So he brought in some Asian varieties and cultivars, or excuse me, species, and started crossing them and started developing these hybrids that you see today.
So this is a museum of rhododendrons. The mother of hybridized rhododendrons is right here
that's
in
pretty much
Sandwich,
it.
Massachusetts at Heritage, which is a wonderful thing.
Yep.
And this was his herb garden here, right around his house.
It was.
They have stage shows here. They're going to bring in wonderful art shows. Later in another program, we'll talk about the wonderful Norman Rockwell show that they're bringing here. So there's always reasons to come to the Heritage Museum and Gardens. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out, and I'm really very happy to have met you, and welcome to Sandwich. It's been wonderful talking to you, and I'm really looking forward to these monthly visits. The bonsai sounds exciting, but the monthly visits, I think, is really where you would get to know this place tremendously. So thank you all very much for tuning in, and again, Les, thank you very much for your time. If there's any questions, would you like to give out the website for
Sure.
Heritage and say, they can contact you?
Certainly.
Yeah.
If you would like more information on anything we've talked about or about the gardens, just go to our website. It's heritagemuseumsandgardens.org. So I look forward to seeing lots and lots of you here and hearing from you as well.
What a great resource! Great resource for the town and the entire southeast part of Massachusetts. The website also gives operating hours, times. They have wonderful listings of all the classes that we talked about here,
Everything's on the
and
website.
information on the entire garden. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you the next time.